Well, hello, hello. Andrew, it's an exciting day.
Always
Buckle
is
up.
when I'm podcasting with you, Lise. Always is.
Buckle up. Association Transformation, episode 162 for the record books. We
Mm.
are going to tackle a conversation that you and I we disagree on this? We'll find out, I guess. But I am excited to introduce two new nonprofit association CEOs, both of who I've had the privilege of working with. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves because their resumes are so stellar that I don't want to screw it all up. But I will start with Sandy Moore. Sandy Moore, how are you with the Pet Advocacy Network?
I'm doing fabulous today. Thank you. It's good to be here. So I'm Sandy Moore, the new CEO of the Pet Advocacy Network. I have been on the job for just a little over 100 days since July 7th of this year. I came from the pet industry as a live animal distributor, won a really prestigious award for my advocacy efforts on behalf of the industry. In 2024, I was named the Florida Department of Agriculture Woman of the Year, but was in industry for 30 something years, running the world's largest distributor of live animals, live pets, to pet stores across the country.
So we'll get into this a little more, but you were a member of the association that you
Yes.
are now the CEO of.
Yes, I was a member and a board member for almost 2 decades. Yes.
Okay, all right, great. Melissa Lohner, how are you, my friend?
I am
Welcome
great.
back.
How are you guys?
I think are you on day 10 of your new
Day
CEO
10.
job?
Woo, woo, woo.
Yes.
Day 10, National Society of Compliance Professionals. Where did you come from? How'd you get here?
Yeah. So, very similar to Sandy, I have been in the financial services industry for a little over 26 years, mainly in compliance and supervision. And so because of that, I became a member of the organization in 2011, 2012. So I've been a longstanding member, worked on a number of their committees, chaired a number of the committees, was on the board, was the chair of the board when a position internally opened up. And I decided that based on my passion for the industry and the organization, that I wanted to be able to advocate and help those individuals that did the job that I had been doing. And so I took a leap of faith and went from the corporate world into the nonprofit world, and then took over as CEO 10 days ago.
Wow, whiplash, whiplash.
Mhm.
Um, Andrew Chamberlain, maybe you want to introduce yourself to these fine executives. You're usually the spokesperson against industry leading the association.
Uh, uh,
That's
am I?
usually not you.
Am I? I didn't
Yeah,
know
you
that that was the role. I mean, I'm happy for that to be that'll be the role I'll be playing this evening for today's podcast. I'll be playing the role of anti corporate. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I was just
What's
for,
the
I mean,
saying? You have a saying. You don't have to work it
oh,
to
right.
run it, or
Okay.
what's
Yeah.
your
No.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah. What I am. Yeah. I am vehemently opposed to. I've done it so I can run it.
Okay, got it.
Which is something that have come across, quite a lot in my career in the nonprofit world. I too used to be a chief executive, so have lived the dream like Melissa and Sandy are about to do. But no, I'm not anti. To be clear, I'm not anti set Melissa and Sandy up against me at the start of this podcast. What I am against is the presumption that simply because I've worked in an industry, I therefore qualify to run the trade body that represents that industry. I think it is a far more complex and nuanced set of skills that are required. That I don't dispute for a second that Melissa and Sandy have those skills. What I challenge is that often I've done it, I can run it is also viewed as a de facto retirement job for a lot of people, and that's what associations leadership cannot be. So that is where I sit on the piece, not whether you
Okay,
should or
okay.
shouldn't.
All right, you can still like him. I wanted to clarify his position. And it's funny, this conversation around should we hire someone from industry or should we hire someone with association experience has really been percolating quite a lot in the last few weeks. People wondering where's the right balance to strike. And you each had a different path. Again, Sandy came from a board position within the industry and went through a national search, had to kind of go through all those hoops and bells and whistles. Melissa, you had a different path where you took a different role, a deputy role within your organization, served in that capacity for what, almost a year.
Yeah.
And then were given the opportunity for the CEO position. In both of your short tenures, how different is the nonprofit, the association world than your corporate background? What's the biggest difference?
It's night and day for me. It really is. And I wanted to compliment Melissa on what she said about it being a leap of faith going from industry into the nonprofit world. It's really what it was. So how different is it? It's different guardrails, different rules, and a lot more bosses than I had before.
Yes. Now, I would hope that there's a part of the silver lining, part of the superpower you bring is having been in the shoes of the members and the board members and being able to speak to them with maybe a different authenticity or a different perspective. Do you get that? Do you get to use that tone with the board members or with the volunteer leaders, or are you now automatically a
Absolutely.
staff member?
Absolutely. I feel like, I've been their colleague. I'm still their colleague. I feel like that they're more a part of the organization maybe than they were allowed to be before. I really value their expertise and what they bring to the board.
I agree with that. I do think also that it brings another complication to it too, that I hadn't necessarily thought of, is a lot of these individuals were my go-to people when I was in the industry. They were my best friends. They were my therapist, my camp counselors. Like, we were pretty close. And now, on the flip side of that, I do talk to them as still colleagues, partially because I would do that anyway, anywhere I worked. It's a partnership, but the additional complexity that brings into it is I now have to put guardrails on some of those conversations that I didn't have to before, because now it is very different being the CEO versus being their colleague. And so that is a little bit of a interesting stepping around, trying to kind of still figure that out.
Yes.
So are these members, I don't know what the normal honeymoon period looks like anymore for a CEO, especially a first-time association CEO. Do you get more? Do you get a longer leash, or are you looked at as someone learning an organization you're not familiar with and therefore you get less?
I think both sides may be true. I think from a financial perspective, I think I get a longer leash than a previous association executive. For results, it's right. The expectation is immediate results.
And I think it's interesting,
Yeah.
even though we're kind of the same, mine might be a little bit flipped on that. But partially because I was the chair of the finance committee for a year or two, and then I was also an executive, and then as a staff person, I was the staff liaison for finance. So I think I have a shorter leash on that finance side. The results side may be a little bit more interesting because I think I'm also bringing a different perspective to my board and some of my members, which is, you guys, this didn't trigger for me till I came on this side, but we have to stop thinking like a financial services firm, and we have to start thinking like an association, which is really what we are. And so, because I don't think I appreciated that when I was a board member until I became staff. And so now I'm being able to attack that with them, coming from Sandy's point of, I was your peer and I didn't get it. So here's the things I want to talk to you about. So I think mine's a little bit flipped. I have a little bit less leeway on the financials and maybe more on the goals and results. But I'm still 10 days in and we haven't set some of those things up. So that could completely change.
Which I think is fair enough. But it's interesting. I think it's an interesting question, though, Elise, because why do you assume, or why do you, I know why you asked the question, but why is there an assumption that because we're in a non-profit environment, that the expectations on us should be any different to if we're in a for-profit corporate environment? I would expect a chief executive in a for-profit to have, in a non-profit, to have the same level of expectation as in any environment. I'm curious as to why do you think, and actually this is a question for everybody here, which is why do we think that concept, that perception still permeates around the non-profit environment, that for some reason that we talk about non-profit, for-profit as though the role is distinctly different. The context is distinctly different, but surely to be a chief executive is to be a chief executive is to be a chief executive. So why do we think it's okay that, or it's understood, it's maybe and it's quietly unsaid that there is a different level of expectation on chief executives? Because surely there's not, is there?
No, I'll take that one, Andrew, because I think that's actually why I ended up in this role. It wasn't so much because I was a member before on the board before. I think that helped, but I think in my working with Lisa, and coming in as operations, the chief operations, that's what she was hiring me for, was because of my background in running businesses
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
an executive at other firms and looking at strategic planning, those types of things.
Yeah.
Being a member helped and was extremely beneficial, but it wasn't for that reason. And then as she moved throughout the year and decided to retire, it was because she felt comfortable with my business acumen. And
Yeah.
then from where it came in the industry, being able to work with members like I do and knowing them helped. I took Elisa's question as a little bit different previously, which was because I was already familiar with the organization and the association coming on. Did I feel like that gave more leeway? Not so much a CEO difference between nonprofit and corporate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
would
I mean,
agree with that. I think that there's a grace period for new CEOs, regardless if it's profit or nonprofit, and it's to learn what the subject matter is, or to learn the different category of business that they haven't been exposed to before.
yeah, yeah. I mean, having done a few executive searches, the board always debates this. Can we teach the association management side of this, or can we teach the industry language, the industry nuances? And very often it's determined easier to teach the industry stuff. It's easier to teach the language of our profession. We can learn the language of our members. We can teach someone that the and maybe you two kind of break that mold, because you come from very unique industries. They're not easy to pick up. They're more complex than people give them credit for. What has been easier? I mean, you're each learning the association space, but now you have to represent a diversity of members that may not be exactly where you came from in your industry.
Mm.
What's the easier language to learn?
French.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know because I've been speaking it for so long now. I would just thinking back of my own recent hiring, I think it might be easier, or we're taking the approach of easier of teaching the industry lingo than association. Although I've hired a good mix, which is nice, people who are from the industry, people who are not from the industry, but from associations. I I think it's probably, to me, more dependent on the individual and how they learn and if they're open to learning, right? Like that was another thing with me, is I was open and excited learning about association work, which is where we really needed to go. So I think it's more what the organization needs at that period in time, and who the candidates are, and if they can learn the opposite of what they know.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, so much of that we talk about expectation really comes from what the organization has been going through, the
Mm.
leadership that's transitioning out, the internal, external realities of the business and what the industry is going through. So maybe it's not even fair to package it in nonprofit and for profit, but it's situational.
Right.
Sandy, what language has been harder for you?
I don't know that either of those languages has been harder. It's been learning how to run a government affairs team, right? Because that is outside, it had been outside of my wheelhouse. So that's a very quick ramp up. I had to become proficient at that very quickly.
And Melissa's had the opportunity already to do some hiring.
Mhm.
How do you've now seen on both sides of the fence. And Melissa, you mentioned you're hiring association people and industry people. Sandy, how is your hiring? How have you been navigating the building of your team?
So that's been interesting as they kind of change the structure of the organization. I am depending more on outside consultants now, people that are actually subject matter experts and that can be, that I can utilize them for the time that I need instead of having adding additional headcount to the organization.
And Melissa, are you guys fully staffed? I know you have a lot of new team members over the last 12 months.
Yeah, and so to be fair with that, some of that was a planned structure, right? Some upskilling and some new positions that we had planned to hire for anyway, even outside of the transition. So we do plan to do a little bit more hiring in 2026, one or two positions, potentially three. But we really focused on our leadership and increasing some of the leadership. Like Sandy mentioned, we didn't have an advocacy person, but yet that's a huge part of our mission. And so we hired a director of regulatory affairs and advocacy. So also kind of changing that structure up and building for future growth. And then we'll go ahead and backfill.
So how do you look, recognizing that, I sound a bit like like a walking contradiction at the moment, but recognizing that on one hand, I'm saying, we need to recognize the parity of the role, regardless of which environment it's in. But we also need to recognize that it is a different environment, nonetheless. What do you think, as a CEO, in the non-profit environment, in the membership environment, how do you think, what do you think the differences are in terms of how we measure our success or how you will measure your
Yeah.
success within the non-profit environment? Because it's not shareholder take home. It's not return on investment is not necessarily measured with stocks and shares. So how do you think how you plan to measure your success or your organization's successes? Melissa,
I don't think
Sandy, go on.
Oh,
I'm going
sorry,
to.
go ahead.
No.
For me, it's not simply a win and loss ratio, right? It's not
No.
it's not that simple ROI. It's also about changing the conversation and changing consumer sentiment around sourcing of their live pets. Like, is it okay that the person who bred this animal for you makes money?
Yeah.
Right? And it's such a simple conversation, but it blends into exactly the areas that we're combating.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think your missions are very different.
Mm.
What your stakeholders, we'll just call them stakeholders, expect and why they participate is very different. But I think Sandy, you're basically you've been hired to not only run a government affairs department like Melissa, but you're also kind of the face of this campaign. You're the face of this message.
Right.
Melissa, when you were kind of, did they give you a new job description when you took this role? What was success defined, or how was it defined for you?
So it hasn't been.
What?
And Elisa, as you know, we're going through strategic planning right now for the next 3 years, which will drive a lot of that.
Yeah.
Now, I have set my own goals of what I believe are success. And for me, I agree with Sandy right now. It's not so much an ROI, but there are some pivotal things that are happening in our industry. And that gives us the opportunity, right? Like my predecessor, Lisa, would say, we're kind of going into an NSCB 2.0, right? The foundation's there, but it's time to redo the pink shag carpet and the gold zinc walls, right? And so with that, you always find that there was something that probably wasn't as clear as you thought it was. So really creating that transparency and creating processes around the things that we do. And then also honing in on that engagement with our members, because the way we engage today and in the future is not going to be the way that we engaged previously. And so really looking at what does that mean to the organization, but also to the members and future members, and how can we, increase that engagement or at least deepen that engagement. And so I've kind of set that as my own goal right now.
So does this first year, I know Sandy, you said you're at about the 100-day mark.
Yeah.
Does the end of the calendar year provide you an opportunity to define your vision? Are you being looked to for that, or does the mission serve that purpose? Do you get to do kind of any State of the Union, or here's what my goals are moving forward?
So I do plan on doing a State of the Union, kind of putting out, where we've been in the past in 2025 and what my vision is for 26. And that's still daily, it shifts a little bit as our challenges, as we have, our detractors change tactics, we have to be nimble.
Because I would imagine that is where the expectations are higher. The members know you came from industry. That's part of, what sold you, or what your superpowers are. So they're expecting you to speak their language, to know what's needed and what's relevant. And I would think that their expectations for even communication and transparency are higher.
And
you're one of them. You're one of them. They want to see what you see and know how you're gonna do this differently.
Exactly. And so communications, like Melissa said, has been such a big change within the organization. Regular and impactful communications with the membership, and then out to the consumer base.
Yeah. Melissa, you have a big end of the year, Christmas newsletter that's going to go out to the full membership.
No, it's really funny, right? We just came off our national conference where we had nearly 1,000 people attending our national conference at the end of October. And so we did a huge business meeting there and kind of a passing of the baton, and talked a lot about what we had done, what we've been looking for, what some of the goals for the next year would be. But again, we didn't get too deep into things because we are deep into the strategic planning. So to Sandy's point, more thoughtful and intentful communications. Again, doing a State of the Union later in the first quarter after we've got the strategic planning done, and talking about that. But we also have some opportunity for some people other than me to just be talking, like our director of government or of association management or engagement, and our director of regulatory affairs, to also be able to communicate those things out, and that being thoughtful and intentful. So I think communication.
Well, maybe that's why there's no firm answer. There's never going to be, it has to be an association person, or it has to be an industry person. There's times when one may be more appropriate than the other, given what the association needs. I think we have admitted it already here. They're held to different standards, and the expectations for them and around them are going to be different. But there shouldn't be one way or another. And I don't think you guys were so involved in your organizations, and that's really where the secret sauce was. You're not just some person from the profession or person from the industry. You were intimately aware of and heavily, heavily committed to the success of these organizations as volunteer leaders. So I think there's a lot to be said for someone who's willing to take that leap of faith, willing to say, I love this industry, I love this specialty so much that I'm going to bring what I know and my passion as a member into a foreign world, into a place I don't get, to drive value and to drive impact. I hope your memberships appreciate you. I hope your boards treat you with all the love and respect that you deserve, even during these early weeks and early months. One last question. Now that you have to deal with the board, what is the board behavior that drives you the craziest? And maybe you behaved poorly as a board member yourself.
Yeah,
Now
what
that
was
you
what
look
was
back
your
and
board
realize.
behavior? What was your
Yeah, what
behavior
was your
that
bad board
you
behavior?
now realize was not as helpful as you thought it was?
It's funny, but it's true, right? I would call my CEO all the time after I became staff and was doing things and was, I am so sorry. Like we did this to you. I was part of this. I am so sorry. I think for me right now, it is just what I mentioned before, getting them to realize that they are a board and we are an association, not a financial services firm, which is the first place where we always want to go. And again, as a board member and probably even as the chair, I didn't quite appreciate and really understand that as much until I started getting into the association world, right? So just being more thoughtful of that and running us like we are an organization and a business and an association business, not a financial services firm.
Yeah. Well, I wonder with you at the helm if it almost makes it harder for them to make that separation.
I think
Because
so. And that's one of those like unintended consequences that I was
Yeah.
talking about, right? Like where it just, they've always seen me as that compliance professional with them as their peer. And now it's like trying to getting the boat to switch, right? To make that maneuver and that twist. And so, that for me is probably one of the biggest ones.
Sandy, what was your bad board behavior? You always came prepared.
Yeah, I wish. I was mostly prepared. I'm, overly, overachiever 101. My bad board behavior would have been armchair quarterbacking, right? I think that was my worst behavior, and how so far that hasn't happened yet with my board, but I'm including the people that are affected by whatever it is that we're dealing with and over communicating, and that seems to be the real key. And so it's that simple.
Well, we are so impressed by both of you, so excited for the organizations that have the benefit of your dual expertise, and we're excited to have you now as members of the Association Transformation family. So you'll have to check back in. We want to hear how the 1-year anniversaries go, and I think you make this debate one that it's muddy, it's not clear, and I think people like yourselves with your resumes and your commitment to these organizations are maybe really the unicorns that those who say, let's bring someone in from industry is really looking for someone like a Melissa and a Sandy. That may not always be what you get. So the debate will continue. Andrew will continue with his, just because you've run it. What's your saying again? I forgot already.
I've done it so I can run it.
Here you go. We'll get that on a grumpy man mug for you. You can so I don't keep forgetting it. But thank you both so much. Good luck. Keep fighting the good fights, and we'll see how things look on the other side of a year. And until then, put your members and your mission.